Hey guys, Kate here. Welcome back to Planning Collective. So, I have been working on putting together a bunch of videos that are aimed to either tell you some of my common planning tips, things for you to avoid, some of my wedding pet peeves. And before I have been able to put anything out there, the world changed. And so this is going to be a first video that I'm going to do and put out. It's a topic I never thought I was going to have to talk about. But because I don't have any of my other videos out there, I figured I would start by just letting you know that I am a wedding planner in the Detroit area. I've been in the industry for over 16 years and helped 300 plus couples with their weddings and in planning and day of coordination and all of the different levels in between. And this sucks. This all just really, really sucks. I'm recording this video in mid-April. It is mid-April, the 16th. And so obviously it's been about a month of all of this craziness that's happening. I hope if you're seeing this, you are safe, your family is safe. It feels odd talking about weddings and events at this time, but I think it's really important that we do talk about it. We grieve for those weddings and events that have been canceled. Again, I know it sounds funny because there are people that are obviously really sick. There are people that are dying. There are people that are going through something much more devastating than postponing or canceling your wedding. But that doesn't take that grief or that pain away for what you're going through. So first off, I'm so sorry if you are in this position, if you need to postpone or change your wedding, if you've had to postpone or change your wedding date. I am fully with you and supporting you, and it's okay to feel devastated by that. I know I am feeling devastated for my couples that we've had to change their dates for, or that maybe just simply can't reschedule for whatever reason. I'm feeling horrible for my vendor friends. All of us have just seen our season, our livelihood just kind of wash away. And it is devastating. It really is. There's no way around it. But again, I'm healthy. My family's healthy. I hope the same for you and my vendor friends, and we'll figure everything else out, right? So I guess from there, what I wanted to talk about here is what to do if you think you might need to postpone your wedding, if you have had to and you're not sure what to do from here. What do we do about weddings and celebrations in this super, super weird time that we're in? So one of the biggest things I would encourage you to do, and this is something that I think everybody in the industry is really trying their best to do and make happen for couples and clients that have events that were scheduled in this window, is please, if you can, postpone, don't cancel. So many people in the wedding industry, so many vendors are small businesses, and we really rely on these events happening in order to pay our bills. I'm in a very lucky position in that, I don't have a business that has a ton of overhead. I have a home office. Yes, I can't go down to my co-working space, and I have some overhead, but I don't have lots of employees to have to figure out how to keep moving in all of this. So I am very lucky in that regard. There are many venues and rental companies and musicians that just have massive amounts of equipment and overhead that they have to manage, and they have to keep employees going during this time. And so if at all possible, please postpone your event, don't cancel it. I know it can be really hard if you're looking at changing something from what your dream wedding was going to be. But again, if at all possible, your dream can be changed a little bit. It might not be what you thought, but if you can make it happen, it's going to be just as amazing on whatever new date it is that you pick, and your vendor team will be there behind you. I can't wait for the first wedding of the couples that we've had to postpone, because that celebration is just, I mean, it's going to mean so much more to everybody, but especially seeing the vendor side of it, we're going to be so ready to get back and get things moving for you. So if you can, if possible, postpone, don't cancel. One other side note that I'm putting this out there because it is a request that I think will help a lot of small businesses, small vendors out there, just like we're trying to support our restaurants, we're trying to order out, we're trying to, keep some of these small businesses alive during this time. If you have an event that was supposed to be coming up in the next couple of months and you've had to reschedule, if you can, and I know everybody's financial situation at this time is different, but if you can, try to continue making payments to these vendors. Like I said, I am lucky in that it's just me, just my mouth to feed. I don't have a bunch of little ones. I don't have rent I need to worry about for an office space. But so many businesses do, any penny that comes in is really going to help them stay afloat during this time. So if you have any payments and you are postponing your wedding, please see if you can and put 25% of that payment down, half of that initial payment down on what would have been that due date. If you haven't been impacted financially and it doesn't make a difference if you pay your balance off now versus down the road, your vendors, I'm sure, will be beyond grateful for you if you can continue making payments at the time of the initial due date, because it's just going to make sure that their business is still healthy and they can kind of make sure that they're able to rock it out for you whenever that wedding day comes around. So I don't want to sound insensitive about any other issues. I know everybody's going through a lot of financial stress right now, but if at all possible, do what you can to try to make those payments if you are in that kind of position. If not, most of your vendors are going to understand that. Obviously, each of us is being impacted in a different way. I know I have a lot of clients that are also business owners, retail shop owners, and I know that their future from a financial standpoint is very much in question. I mean, all of us are nervous about it, but some are impacted more than others. So for all of the vendors out there, I had to throw that out there as a possibility if you are able to do it. I know your team will greatly appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about those of you who know you need to postpone. So you are in the window. Again, right now we are in mid-April. In Michigan here, we are in stay at home until the end of the month, but we all know there are going to be restrictions beyond that. We have rescheduled everything from April and May at this point. Right now, my June clients have also rescheduled because we are anticipating that even once the stay-at-home restrictions are lifted, there are going to be caps on the amount of guests that can gather, if we can even have events in general in May or June. Plus, I think people are going to be a little bit nervous about hanging out in large groups, definitely for the next couple of months. My personal opinion, I think July is likely going to be impacted as well in regards to guest counts. I think it's highly likely that we're going to see, whether it's on an individual state basis or a federal basis, we're going to see that that gatherings are limited to a certain number of people. And so my best advice right now, if your wedding is before June or July and having your guest count above 100 people or more is important, I would start talking to your vendors about the possibility of postponing. So I should start by saying I'm a wedding planner. I love what I do. I love my job. I find that I'm able to add value to a lot of couples in all of my clients' lives. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. All I can do in this video is give you my thoughts, my experiences in the wedding industry, what I'm hearing people talking about locally here in Michigan, and just what I think is going to happen based on what we've seen in the last month or so, and what I just think is going to be how we move forward. Of course, no one knows truly what's going to happen. No one can predict at this point. So this is just my advice at this point in time. In a week, I might feel like I need to delete this video because everything has changed and this is way off. But this is just kind of my opinion. If you're an engaged couple hoping to get married in the summer of 2020, it is now mid-April, and here's my advice for you. So again, June and July, I feel strongly that those dates are going to be impacted. Again, whether it's legally that the states or the government doesn't allow events over a certain amount of people, or guests are just uncomfortable attending. Talking to a client last week, or I guess it was just a couple of days ago, she said she started crying thinking about her dance floor being full of people social distancing 6 to 10 feet away with masks on. She just knows that's not the wedding she wants. Now, for some couples, if having 20 to 50 people is perfectly fine, that sounds ideal, or maybe that was your plan initially, then great. I think June and July might be likely for smaller gatherings. And of course, even now, depending on your household breakdown, you can certainly have a legal ceremony if you have somebody that can be ordained, if you already have your license, if you picked it up before all of this started to get too crazy. You can certainly legally make it happen. I guess I say that, but it would depend on what legal services or what court services are open. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but that piece of it, I mean, if you break it down, you really need 5 people to be legally married. You need the couple. So you need the couple, but you need 3 other people outside of yourselves. You need an officiant and you need 2 witnesses, 2 adults that are legal witnesses. So you really only need 5 people. So once we get to a point, or depending on, again, who's in your household that you're allowed to hang out with, once we get to the point where you can kind of gather with family, and of course you can apply for marriage licenses again, then that loosens up. You can legally get married. You can, restaurants open up, have a small dinner. So that's going to be different. I hope that a lot of couples that have had to postpone their wedding celebration opt to still get married and celebrate with a smaller group. Again, maybe just a dinner reservation, maybe a private dinner at home, again, depending on what happens and when restaurants can open up again. But that can still happen, I think, in June and July. So if you were planning on getting married in June and July, it might still be able to legally happen. You just might have to rethink the party side of things. So if you are looking at postponing, what do you do? So the first step is going to be to reach out to your venue, reach out to your catering team if you're doing something like in your backyard or in like a rental shell of a venue where you bring everything in. Reach out to those 2 main vendors and find out what your options are. There's no way to know when the safe date is going to be. I'm hopeful it's sooner rather than later. I'm aware of the fact that we could be looking at guest limitations throughout the rest of 2020. I hate that I just said that out loud, but I think that is a potential reality, whatever that means, whether those guest limitations are 20, 50, 100, 250. For a very brief amount of time here in Michigan, 250 was our limit. So there must have been some reasoning for that number, and then we quickly jumped down to 50 and we're there for about a week. So I think we're going to see the reverse of that we're going to be at 50 for a little bit of time, and then they're going to open it up to a little bit more, and then they'll open it up to a little bit more. Now, what that time frame is going to be, or how long that's going to take until we're opened up to everybody, I don't know. I wish I could tell you I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen before August. I feel that August and September are going to be impacted by those guest counts. And of course, at this point in mid-April, they're also predicting that we might get another hit of this in October. So we might see a resurgence of these restrictions. Again, not to where we're at now, but that might impact large guest counts. If you have a large guest count If you have a lot of guests that you're planning on having attend your wedding and that is important to you, I would recommend holding off until 2021. I got a pit in my stomach saying that. I really did. I know there are some vendors out there that are more optimistic than others. They think we're going to be back up and running with large scale events in June or July. I don't see how that's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong with this. But I would also hate for you to postpone your wedding just to have to postpone it again. So to be safe, many of my clients are postponing until 2021. And to be honest, a lot of those are because they really wanted to get married on that specific weekend or that time of year. They wanted a spring wedding. And if they wait until the fall or winter, that's a very different wedding. And so a lot of them are making that decision just so they can get married at the same time of year that they wanted to. Others are doing it because, of course, they're nervous about these guest counts. And then some others, it just works for their family and their timing. So it might not be either of those reasons. It worked best to postpone until next spring or summer. So do what is best, reach out to your venue, ask what the options are, and then start contacting the rest of your vendor team. If you are July, August, September, you don't need to make a decision yet, but start having that conversation with the vendors and start thinking about what your priorities are. So again, I think August, September, you're more likely to be impacted by restrictions of the guest count. So think about whether or not you were told you could only have 50 people or you could only have 100 people. Would you still want to move forward with your wedding as is, or would you want to postpone until you could invite your full guest count? Every couple's answer is going to be different for that. For some, it might not be way off from their original guest count anyway. So they'll just have to shave a few people off that list. And let me tell you, people will understand. So just kind of think about what's best, but start the conversation with your vendors just so you know what your options are. If you need to wait until, fall of 2021 for some venues that are very popular. They might not have other Saturdays open. You might need to think about, would you rather have your guest count lower or a Friday or a Sunday wedding? So these are some of the questions and some of the things that couples are going to have to balance and kind of go back and forth with about what is your priority. Again, having your guest count versus a Friday or Sunday, all of these things that nobody can answer for you except, the two of you and what your preference would be. But I would start having the conversation with your vendors and your venue so you know what those options are and you can start kind of figuring out what would be your priority or your preference. I still recommend you continue moving on with your plans. So still continue on as though you're moving forward. With these weddings, continue working on whatever details you've been working on whenever your wedding is. Start working on finding vendors if you still need them. In an ideal situation, if you do need to postpone, you'll simply be able to copy and paste your wedding to a new date. So any time that you spend on designing your menu cards or figuring out what invitation suites you want, you're still going to be able to use that in the new wedding plans, just put a different date on things. So all of the work that you're doing in planning a wedding won't go to waste. It will just be changed to a different date, if that makes sense. So I would not recommend ordering anything with dates on it at this point. So if you're looking at favors that you wanted with your dates printed on it or menu cards with a date, anything with a specific date, I would just say hold off. If you're doing programs without the date or any kind of favor or something like that, continue with the planning. Continue with all of those details, because even if you do need to postpone, you're still going to need to figure out those details. So how do you know when it's time to pull the trigger and postpone your wedding? I know for a lot of people it's going to be different. If you have a lot of people traveling that need to get on a plane, book hotels, I would say sooner rather than later, because people are going to be very nervous about flying and about staying anywhere that is not their home, their safety of their own home. So I would say that kind of bumps up your timing a little bit. If you are local, if everyone is local and you're not making any plans or payments or anything like that, you can hold off and just kind of wait and see. Don't send out invitations or anything. Obviously, the normal timeline of invitations or counts, everybody's going to have to be flexible with all of that in the next several months because of what's going on. So your vendors will be able to kind of be flexible with you on that. What if you decide to not postpone, but you don't have the counts that you thought you were going to have, and you're okay with that? So let's say your 200-person wedding is now 50 or 20. Talk to your venue, talk to your vendors. You most likely sign contracts with higher minimums or guaranteeing a certain number of rentals or counts. Most people are going to be flexible in this kind of situation because this is no one's fault. It's not like couples are canceling just because no one could have predicted this. So I'm seeing most venues are going to be accommodating with your minimums and payments. And honestly, they probably would be happier to have the smaller group than no group at all. So they're probably going to be able to work with you on that, and vendors as well. So what if you've had to postpone or cancel? How does that work from a vendor standpoint? Now, again, legally, I can't speak for everyone. I can't speak for all vendors. My policy and what I've seen is happening most often is that vendors are more than happy to transfer your wedding date to another date that they have available. So any couple that needs to postpone or reschedule, no charges, no additional fees, no anything, no 2020 new rates, is what I'm seeing most often happening for most vendors. And again, that's my policy. So I'm not charging anything extra because you had to postpone because of this. Now, I know that that's not the case for everyone. I have heard there are some vendors that are still enforcing their rescheduling fees. They are charging 2021 rates that would have been higher. All I can say is that's not the route I've taken, but I understand the logic behind it and why they're doing it. If they from a vendor perspective, we've all lost what's probably going to be most of our year, most of our season, most of our business for the year. And now a good portion of that is being transferred over to dates that would have been booked by other couples. So again, this is no one's fault, but that's the logic behind, well, now we've had 2 dates for one couple, so there's going to be a fee because we're putting you into this date instead of taking another couple into this date. So that's the logic behind it. Again, it's not my personal theory. The only time I would personally add an additional charge for couples in this situation is if we had to start from scratch from a planning perspective, not just from a rescheduling perspective. So let's say we have to completely scrap all the plans, find a new venue, find all new vendors, then that's a little bit different. But planners are different in your vendors because we put a ton of our work in ahead of the wedding as opposed to a lot of vendors where it's different. So that's where it might be different. You might see some of those additional fees because there is more legwork now involved in this wedding or in this date. So most vendors, again, are allowing you to simply move your deposits over to the new date, whether your balance is now something new because it's a different year or prices have increased. That's a conversation to have with them. But what happens if if you just need to cancel? For a variety of reasons, there are some couples that just need to cancel. They don't have the choice to postpone, and they need to cancel their wedding. Or you pick a new date to postpone to, and a vendor is not available. So essentially you're canceling their contract. Most vendors, and this is my general policy, most vendors are not refunding the deposit that was made. And personally, this is a scenario that's different for every couple, and every wedding and every scenario and what the vendor specific details are. But I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and what most vendors I've talked to are doing. is that they are more than happy to work with a couple in trying to find a new date, but they just can't offer a refund. And for each business, that's going to be different. Of course, I'm going to take mine on a case by case basis. If it's something we really tried to work up an agreement for, or if there's something else going on, they just decide to cancel. There has to be the business side of it as well, that we all need to make sure that we're coming out of this with healthy businesses. But I also want to be a decent human being. So I want to be fair to everybody in this scenario. So that's kind of the weird balance in this. And luckily, I have not been put in that position. I've been able to work with my clients to find other dates. But if you do happen to be in that position, see if you can, depending obviously on what the vendor does, what their service is there a way to utilize them in a different capacity? So for me, let's say you can't have your wedding postponed because you're pregnant, or you're moving, or whatever it might be. Maybe we could work on a baby shower, or can I credit your services to another family or friend? For a florist or a rental company or a venue, if you've put down a deposit that's non-refundable and you can't change the date, is there someone you can gift that to or repurpose what you were going to utilize for them? If it's a hotel, do you have a credit to the restaurant or a credit to the hotel property? Or try and get creative. I think most vendors are going to be happy to be creative in that mindset and help you guys out, but also try to make sure that they can still keep their employees employed, still make sure their lights are on in their venues, or keep their warehouse staff moving. And so for each vendor, returning the deposits is not going to be an option. But see if you can get creative with okay, well, how can we maybe get something from our deposit anyway, even if you can't simply postpone? So again, it's a horrible situation for everyone. It's horrible for the couples who have dreamt of this wedding and spent so much time and money putting this together, and just to see it all disappear. And for vendors for the same thing, this business that they've built, be this big question mark right now. It's scary. And it's, it's sad. It's really sad. So generally speaking, we're all in this together. And I think just reach out to your vendors with compassion for what they're going through. I would hope they will do the same thing with you and come up with kind of a fair balance. So if you are engaged, but your wedding date is out of this bubble, whatever that bubble might be, maybe you're not worried about needing to postpone or cancel, but you're still impacted by wedding planning during all of this, I'm going to do another video just for you. So you can find that. I'll link that here for you. But also reach out. Let me know whether you're still planning, whether you're postponing, wherever you're at. Let me know what we can do to help. Let me know what your experience is. Again, what I've shared here is just what I am hearing from different industry meetings and calls and webinars and everything that I've been on, but you might be seeing something completely different. So I would love to know what you're hearing and what your experience is. So please comment with that, or find me at kate@planningcollective.com and let me know how I can help. So I will say this is not going to be the normal tone of my videos. All of my videos are going to be meant to help take stress out of the wedding planning process. And I know this is an odd time to talk about that, but hopefully everything else outside of these two videos I'm going to do are going to be helping us stay in a happy wedding planning mindset. It will be a distraction from everything else that's going on in the news, and we can just think happy wedding thoughts together and plan the weddings that will happen at some point when the world opens up again. So again, this will not be the normal demeanor or mentality of our videos, but I am hoping that I can help anybody throughout this process. Reach out, let me know what I can do, and I will see you in the next video.